county commissioners and make some presentations. Our portion was on the CIP and an update to the executive summary. This is normal stuff that we typically do in a bond year in particular, which we'll go back in July and do the same thing. But we tailored it a little differently this year at their request, included a lot more specific information about projects. We didn't go over it in the meeting, but the information was there. And I think it was well received. I mean, they had some really good questions about things. And so that's for the FD&C part. I want to note, I don't have a lot to offer up for M&O except for these couple of things. We're still relatively stagnant in terms of where we are with hiring. We've got some positions filled, but as I continue to share, we still are understaffed in that department. And most recently, we lost our director of energy and physical plant. And the reason I share that with you is that director is the guy who is the lead man for handling calls for air conditioning projects.
Okay.
So he has moved on, going to East Carolina University, and just wanted to share that with you. As it stands right now, we've got 2 vacant director positions. The other one that's vacant is environmental and grounds, and we're pushing forward to get those filled as soon as possible. Turning to transportation, you'll get a great update today on a survey that Jason did some time ago. Sarah and I were joking earlier, it's been a long time in the making. We tried to get this going for some time, but anyway, it's gotten to the finish line. I'll note that operationally in transportation, we'll be bringing a recommendation soon for another operations field director. These are a couple of positions that are directly under the senior director, which is Jason's position. They've been vacant for some time, and we have found some great candidates. We've got one already hired, but we've got another one that we got coming your way soon. Transportation staff has also started their fall routing, and they're really trying to be more specific and intentional by identifying routes and geographical zones so that we can improve that efficiency on Yellow Bus, but just as importantly on the EC side. And with the EC side, Jason has brought with him 3, we hope, we're getting close, 3 new vendors that we have not had before. So these will be new additions to our EC transportation fleet. We expect maybe to get up to initially 15 or so cabs or vans. And while that doesn't sound like a lot, it will provide some much needed relief. And as they get into our system and learn how we do things, the hope and expectation is that they will continue to add additional vehicles and help us with our capacity efforts. Also, transportation is rolling out a new training program. It's called Vector Training. It will help us do some training that we need to do in a more defined way. It's a software program that we can use for lots of things. For example, on days when we have inclement weather, we have valid bona fide things for them to train on. So that'll keep our employees on the clock and keep them up to date on the trainings that they need. And then lastly, which is exciting and interesting, this summer transportation staff is going to start a pilot program for some turn-by-turn navigation on our tablets on our buses. We haven't had that before. It's something we had looked at. We just hadn't gotten across the finish line, but we are there now. So we no longer have to rely on paper directions. And if you think about when you're riding in your car and you've got your phone up there and it tells you where to go, it'd be very similar to that. So we think that would be a good benefit. It will also benefit our new drivers who've never been on a bus before. And so we're hoping that's going to be something that proves worthwhile to us. So that's the update for today.
Any questions or comments? Chair Jones.
I can go through.
Please.
So, and then this might fall into the transportation survey, but I'm excited to know that there's going to be some new vendors. One thing that I've heard from principals and assistant principals is the amount of time that students that are on those cabs are either, late for their first period classes or teachers are staying hours later. Will this rectify that process, so therefore those students are not as late? I understand there may be some tardies, but an hour,
I think we'll still have, I know we'll still have some tardies, there's no doubt about that. This will provide us some excess capacity that we have not had before, and we will apply that to, I think, both to the routes where we are most efficient in terms of time, but also maybe in areas where we can become really efficient and then, shift some resources somewhere else to take care of some problems. So whatever we get will help. We do know and continually hear about how we do still have late cabs, and that comes down to resources and not having enough cabs or drivers, much like on the yellow bus side.
I just have one follow-up. So what does that accountability look like? Because if a driver is late and still are getting paid, which I understand that's a contract that we're obligated to, but I'm just curious to know what that accountability looks like, because I know I've been getting a lot of feedback from staff that are in the buildings that are concerned about the inconvenience that they're facing. So I'm wondering, is that something that we can start negotiating, or if there's not, putting something that's stronger there, because we all work regular jobs and whatnot, and I'm sure that if that happened to us, there would be some accountability. I'm just hoping it's the same for those vendors.
So we're putting forth an accountability tool, so we're having an evaluation tool for our contractors now. So I'm developing that, and then also we're going to geographical zones for the EC vendors. That way I can help hold them directly accountable. Right now, they're spread across the county, so now STA will have Raleigh and Cary, and so they'll be concentrated within that area versus going out to Apex or, Fuquay. So they're able to make it, when they have an operational issue, they're able to recorrect and regroup, and they're able to serve their student a little bit better versus coming across county.
Gotcha. And I guess will there be because I know the commissioners brought this up with dashboards regarding facilities. Will there be, how will we, and I'm trying to project Raleigh for folks that are listening as well, how will those families be able to track that? Will there be a system in place for them to be able to get those updates, just so families are not as, just trying to ease that experience with those families?
So with that, a couple of vendors have their own technology to push out information to the parents. And the way we have them now, say I have Lucas Service and student being serviced by Lucas and STA, they're unable to push that information because they're not on the same vendor. And so we're able to do that now. We're able to put vendor to vendor for students, and that vendor is able to push out information to the parents and let them know, hey, we're having a student that's going to be late. So they're able to get that information in real time versus us pairing them off, offbeat with a different vendor, not being able to send that information to the parents.
Gotcha. Thank you. And I'm interested in seeing more about that accountability model, because I just think, I understand it's, human behavior that we can't, but I also think when it comes to dealing with our most valuable students, those are students who do require a little bit more time in classrooms, and so those folks cannot necessarily meet that contract that they were doing. I hope that we can be a little bit more strict with that accountability.
Understood.
And I was really excited about the regional model where it prevents vendors from being spread all over the county and have a closed geographical region. So if there are drivers that call in late or some kind of gap, that everything is there and they can quickly sign somebody else, so you don't have those long gaps in terms of delivery time. So we'll see how that plays out, but with that recommendation, I felt really good about the change that it would make.
Thank you. You can hang out there because you're up next in a second. But, Mr. Strickland, something you brought up, and this is, I want to put it on the list really for Mr. Haggerty and Dr. Taylor. We keep talking about, the board has brought up multiple times how we adjust our pay for M&O and various things in that department. And so I'm really looking forward to the pay study, because if our hiring can remain stagnant in a bunch of areas, we've sort of heard about the process and how long it takes and all these other things without change. And if we don't change something, 4 years from now, hiring is still going to be stagnant, and we're still going to have 2 plumbers. And so that's a big priority for me personally as we dig into those reports. So I just wanted to put that out there. Can you please make sure you have someone ready to give this kind of
Absolutely.
operations update in the future? Absolutely. Thank you, Mr. Strickland. And I think we are going to have some meeting minutes questions or potential changes, Mr. Haggerty?
Yeah, thank you. So I know typically at the beginning of the meeting, we review the minutes and we just have a motion to
Right.
accept the minutes with any amendments. If you remember, the last meeting was the meeting where we had the power interruption. We all kind of had to evacuate. So here, the meeting minutes, honestly, that they kind of, I think some of it's more of a transcript. It's sort of like word for word what the speaker was saying at the time we left. And so to make them a little more accurate, I'd like to propose an amendment, well, two amendments, actually. We had the operations update. If we go to the section, initial recommendations for school calendar conversions, what I'd propose is in that first sentence, in that first paragraph, that we change that to staff, like staff indicated they had a plan to present, and then it would continue on the initial recommendations. And then I would just strike that second and third paragraph, because, I mean, that doesn't really tell us anything in terms of votes or content or anything like that. And then the second paragraph is under adjournment. I want to correct the spelling of your name.
Most people mispronounce it here anyways.
I'm usually called Mr. Hershey, so
I know, I apologize for that. It's typically we two sit beside each other and I get them all mixed up.
That's okay.
I'll own that.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Yes, doesn't bother me none, but that's fine. It was spelled right underneath that. Good with that. Do we need a motion? Or can you just?
I can just make the changes.
Yeah, that's fine. So we need a motion, yeah, Ms. Evans.
Oh, okay.
My name is misspelled up in the
Oh.
attendees.
Okay.
It's two N's, L-Y-N-N.
2 ends.
And then, I think, Mr. Chair, if we need like a motion and a second, and then just a smidge of discussion, because I have a question that's probably
Sure.
better done that way.
Can I get a motion to approve the minutes as they will be amended?
Make that motion.
Second?
I'll second.
Chair Swanson. Comments and questions?
Yeah, so just, this appears to me, I wondered if this was done with an AI tool, and I know that we do need to, you know, be up to speed with technology and things happening, you know, as they do, but I don't, this, what concerned me is I agree, this does appear to be a transcript, and minutes are not meant to be a transcript verbatim. And so I just, in a more general sense, I hope that's not a direction that we're moving in with minutes, regardless of the committee or regular meetings, et cetera. That's it. That's what I'm.
So what I'll do is make sure I talk with chiefs about the development of minutes, and I'm not aware that AI is being used to summarize, but we'll make sure we follow up to make sure that's not the case and they reflect.
I mean, it may not be, but it's pretty, that's what it made me wonder. So,
And I also, under approval of committee meeting minutes, Mr. Haggerty, did you see that your name was spelled with 2 R's? You may have said that, I don't know, but I will correct that as well. On the second page.
Oh, I missed that one. I was busy correcting Mr. Hershey. Thank you for that, Dr. Taylor. Yeah.
So I know with this particular meeting, I had a conversation with Attorney Malone because I was concerned about, you know, making sure it was spelled out that this was an error, you know, the power outage is nothing that we can control, just so that was accurately reflected, because I had concerns about if the discussion was taking place. I know it was like maybe 5 or 6 minutes or 20 minutes in the meeting. I did not feel comfortable signing those minutes as chair because of what transpired. So I'm glad that this is being taken care of. So thank you for taking care of all of that for us.
Motion to approve is on the table. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. All right. We are ready for a transportation survey. How are you today?
I'm well. How's everyone doing?
Doing all right, thank you.
All right, I'll jump right into it. So this is a survey that was opened up to the transportation team, and I wanted to take it a little step further. I wanted everybody within transportation to have a voice and have an opinion to say, you know, the parts of contention that they're facing and the things that we're facing in the department as a whole. So with this survey, it ran for 2 weeks. We had 554 individuals to take place in the survey. A little bit less than, a little bit less than what I wanted. We have a workforce of over 900, and so hopefully by the time we take another survey, we'll have more buy-in from the team. As you look at it, I have the team leads all the way down to the administrators and also directors. I gave them an opportunity to speak up about the things that they see within transportation. And so as you see, bus drivers came in at 59% as ones that took part of the survey, and safety assistants at 13%. All right, the next page. So the next page. Okay, the next page is, you know, how long have you been of service to the WCPSS Transportation Department? And with that, we had a range of individuals that spanned from 1 year to 21 plus years. I will go to the terminals and hear the years of service, which would be 32. You know, we have a couple that hit 47 years of service within the transportation department. So this survey spans that information, and then, you know, some of the findings was for the people that took place in the survey that they were here for less than 5 years, about 209, and then our mid-career staff that took place in the survey was 189. Key takeaways from the survey with the historical data that we have within the transportation department is that we could use those individuals to be mentors and help retain drivers, routers, and also just mentor our safety assistants to one day become drivers. And one thing that I marked and I didn't put it in here is, you know, just starting a pipeline from safety assistants to become drivers. A lot of our drivers have now became routers, and from routers to become administrators and team leads out in the district. Next slide. All right. So how satisfied are you with Wake County Public School System Transportation Department? So we're at a 3.5. I believe we can do better. It's a good base start, I believe, but there's room for opportunity. And 541 individuals summarized and gave us the 3.5. Next slide. I have the tools and equipment necessary to do my job safely. So with the strong agree and agree, we had 72%. The disagree and strongly disagree, we had around about 10%. So I want to say that we're able to provide the tools for our people to do the job safely and get it complete. Next slide. Communication from transportation leadership is clear and timely. This came in at 65% with strongly agree and agree, and then disagree around about 17%, and then neither agree nor disagree 16.46. Next slide. Rank the top 3 things that keep you working for Wake County Public School System. Within the transportation department, it was helping the community as number 1. Number 2, the benefits package. I believe you can't beat it. And then number 3 is my coworker, the teamwork and camaraderie. That's one of the things that I've seen within the districts when I go out and visit, the camaraderie that they have, and the planning of the day and how they back each other when we are facing shortages within the district. Go to page 9. All right. Rank the top 3 biggest challenges you face daily. And the first one was communication with dispatch. So right now we don't have radios on the bus, so that's a barrier for the driver to communicate with dispatch or schools. So I have a pilot coming up with Blackstone and Zello to have radios put on the bus to see if we can, see how that works. And we're able to break it down per district, so we're not having too much radio chatter over, the whole school system. So that would help. And help us, have better communication, because I know that the drivers hate when they're already, on their route, and they have to come back, but they have to pull the bus over to receive that communication, so that's time that we lose.
Can you explain that a little bit more? Having the radio,
So having the radio would, it will alert the driver saying, hey, bus 1023 needs to come back, you left a student, versus them delivering all the students, going to the next tier, and then having to pull over, and then we have to, make sure that student is home. So they'll be able to communicate, and even emergency services are listening to the radio. So in case we have a student incident or, an emergency case, we have emergency services that are already listening to, and they can get to the driver.
is that pretty standard?
Yes.
So us not having it is kind of unusual for a district this size.
But we're gonna catch up.
Hey, that's what we're here to do, and that's fine. I mean,
Mr. Chair, I know one of the issues is, as Mr. Tucker has said, is always about when a driver is driving and they have communication, so there's always the idea that you can't talk on a cell phone or do whatever, and that you have to actually pull the bus over. And so at least this way, there's communication on the bus, where before we didn't assume have anything, and you couldn't do that. So, but that's always a barrier, what you can actually do while you're driving.
I'm just curious, as far as, you said we're going to pilot that instead of implement it?
So we're just piloting it first, just to see how it works, because there comes training. Each driver's going to be trained, so it's over 600 drivers. So I want to make sure that I'm getting the best equipment, that everybody's, that's user-friendly, that there's no barrier, because a lot of our drivers are older, and then we do have a few younger ones, but I want to make sure that everybody has the same advantage of using the same equipment.
So we're going to pilot something, it sounds like it's already implemented in other school systems. How long does it take how long will we pilot it for?
I want to do probably a month during the summer, just to see how it goes. Coming from Charles County, we had Motorola. It wasn't a great device. I wasn't able to break it into silos and have a district speak to a district. It was everyone over the radio, and sometimes they can get kind of chaotic and you can miss something. This way, Powell and Stone Mountain, where I can break it down into districts, where, Apex Friendship, Apex can all talk together. And those drivers that are servicing the same school can all hear the same information versus a driver that's driving in care. And so it's able to pinpoint, and we're able to make corrections just with that group when we need to speak.
Okay, great, thank you.
makes a lot of sense.
And then the next one was early mornings. There's nothing we can do about that but get a good night's sleep the day before. And then lack of support with school-based administrators. So coming to transportation, a lot of our workforce are second career individuals that are coming in their late 50s, early 60s, and the breakdown is the respect that they're experiencing with students. And so we're having our AP meetings, and so I will bring this up so they can know that, we need support on that end. However, with our drivers, I'm encouraging them to write up the behavior, not what they feel should be done to the student, but write up the behavior that is going on the bus so we can address it.
And so I'll also share this, Mr. Duncan, this was before you, and I would assume some of this occurred before me, but we've had these kind of meetings with bus drivers and administration to talk about the issues that they have. One of the things that I recognize as a difference is that when you have a tiered system and drivers drive for multiple schools, in most districts you will have school administration that hires the drivers and deal with them specifically, so there's a different kind of relationship, and so they have much better communication. But now, a lot of all of the hiring of drivers and all of those things doesn't necessarily happen at the school level, and so there's always kind of created this barrier. So we've consistently had conversations about how to improve that, make sure that they address discipline things that are submitted by the drivers. But I would imagine that probably was in place before any of us got here. We just kind of,
And this isn't a new discussion point. We have discussed it, I know, in the last 4 or 5 years. I do think it is fair to say that we are doing better now than we were 4 or 5 years ago. Now, it is still a point of discussion, but I do recall 4 or 5 years ago that the number one issue was discipline on buses. And so we talked to the APs a lot, put some things in place and had some conversations with them about being consistent in how we deliver discipline throughout the district on buses, you know, in terms of the severity of things that get identified and what happens to the students. And I do know we've made some progress on that. Again, this is still a point for us to talk about, but from 3, 4, 5 years ago, we are doing a better job than we were initially.
and I'll see that student behavior of the 7 challenges, that is the last one, so maybe that's an indication we are getting better, so.
It's always good to hear. All right, going on to page 11. All right. What can we do to increase your job satisfaction? So in this question, I never wanted to make it about money, because money always find its way to the top. It bubbles its way through any barrier that you have. So our top 5 that I read off is increase in pay, improved leadership, management support, better communication across the department, stronger student discipline, and hire more drivers. So I'll go down to improved leadership and management support. So me and my frontline team of managers, we meet twice a month. We make sure that we have our meeting not delegated for them to meet with their staff. I think it's important that they at least meet with their staff once a month, and in those meetings I drop in. I listen to the meetings, and we have fun facts that we're talking about within transportation to help better improve the communication within the districts. So with that, and then also we're looking at ways to improve how we're staffing. Where we have a job fair on July 11th that we're working towards, to where the whole transportation department will be there with representation to have the people come out. The next question will be, next page, I'm sorry. Okay. And so, what can we do to improve WCPSS Transportation Department? This goes along with the past question. And I'll read off the top 5 was improved communication, which we've started to have monthly meetings within routing, processing text, within finance. So everybody's meeting once a month. Senior leadership team on my side, we meet twice a month. Hiring more drivers, increase pay, and strengthen leadership, and improve student discipline. So on this one, student discipline was the 5th one. All right. Next question, page 13. All right. Rate your leadership with your direct supervisor. So out of 554 individuals, 541 individuals answered this question, and we came with 4.3. So 4.3 was the average rating, so it's, one could say that there's a great relationship with leadership at the districts all the way up to Crossroads. And our last question is, I would recommend working with WCPSS Transportation Department to a friend. I believe a friend sometimes is someone closer than a family member, so we're at 65%, we're right at 65%, so I believe we have some room to scale to go up with that rating. And that is the transportation survey.
I'll note that in assembly, there are some additional items that you all could look at that provides a lot of detail, specific answers to questions if you want to read through that. I'd also I want to go back to what we talked about, the operations directors. Those are positions that have been in the system for some time, and so we're looking to get those filled. And one of the things I know this will do, it will help provide or fill a much-needed gap between the senior level people and the people out in the field. So many of the people that will or are likely to be promoted, as Jason mentioned, started out, doing something else. And as they matriculate up through the system, they know the ropes and they know the people that they are dealing with. So having these couple of people in place will help strengthen that relationship between top and bottom, where we are in communication.
Back on page 10, the chart that we were talking about earlier, the lack of support from school-based administrators. When I saw that, that's not what I was thinking of. Are you saying that that is pretty much related to the student discipline?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, that's interesting. That's very nuanced, because I read it more as how they feel just coming in and out of the building or that type of thing.
So if you want, like Mr. Strickland was saying, there's, like, the wording is within one of the packets that I gave into. I wanted to keep it like this, because I wanted to show my team that I didn't take anything out of it.
Sure.
But in that package that I did give, you'll be able to read the direct comments.
Yeah. Yeah, so I just wonder how, looking at it, because I was excited to see that student discipline issues was the smallest, right? Which is a little bit contrary to I think, perception. But now that I understand that bottom line is correlated with the discipline, I just wonder how accurate the green bar is. Does that make sense? Do you understand what I'm... No. So if student discipline is the least thing that listed as a challenge,
I see what you're saying.
okay, but yet one of the top three is that relationship with school personnel, is the student discipline accurately reflected?
So I think that
You see what I mean?
when I turn in a referral, I'm dealing directly with the administrator. I'm only dealing with the student behavior. And so when they're dealing directly with the individual, they don't get any feedback or no follow-up about what's going on with that. So at that time, they're not dealing with the student behavior,
Right.
they're dealing with the one-on-one interaction with the administrator.
I mean, logically, I can put together that there may be only 20 incidents in a whole year, and the main problem with it is the interaction. Like, I follow that logic, I just,
But there could be some overlap.
yeah.
And I think it's both in that it's the actual incident of the student committing the incident. That is of concern, as was how those incidents are handled by the school administrators, and was that consistent, and was that meted out in the same way every time?
It's definitely a twofold situation because our people need to be able to write up the incident versus, hey, I just talked with the administrator, but they need to put things behind it.
So as we kind of go down this path, I think what I'd love to see at a facilities committee meeting is a full transportation presentation that kind of digs into the processes as you're doing the pilot for the communication or the radios. I think that's something to include. What do those processes look like? I wrote down, is that something, like, I don't know how we communicate with the EC cabs and vans. If we don't have radios in the buses, do they have radios? That sort of, so I don't want to go down that path with this survey, but we'd love to have you back in a few months with like a complete rundown, kind of a transportation 101 of all of these processes. That will help. We'll go Ms. Caulfield, Sarah Swanson, Ms. Gordon.
I appreciate the detail that you put into the survey, and I think it really helps us reflect on like what's coming back. I think I have to agree with Ms. Edmonds. I was excited what you said about the consistency, Mr. Strickland, and how it's changed, that the behavior has improved, and according to the survey, the people who are on the bus are going to know the most, right? So with that number being the lowest, like you said, I felt when I was reading through the comments, the lack of support from school-based administrators being one of the highest, I kind of felt it was more procedural, that they didn't feel that they were getting the support rather than just the behavior. So my question was going to be, based on that, is this shared with all of the administrators in all of the departments? Like, or is it just, here's some suggested reading? Because I think that's a really good reflective tool for all the people in charge to just keep that in mind when they're reading these things, like, okay, I could probably improve on that, and then that helps kind of correct that going forward. But they may not take the time to read this unless...
Well, I think it's absolutely something we want to share, and now that I look and I see the discrepancy that you're talking about, and I do think they're probably talking about two different things in terms of the interaction with administration versus dealing with discipline. So I think it's clear that for these that answer, discipline is not a problem, but that interaction piece is something that I know we addressed when I first arrived here, because that was one of the early meetings that we had.
It was.
You know, and some people talked about not having access to a building, but others said, well, hey, I don't have any problems with mine. But I think that's probably what they were referring to, so we appreciate you bringing it up. I see that discrepancy now.
There was some comments that I had noted, and I think it was in question 9 in the responses, where they were actually talking about administration. And it was really more about team effort, conversation. If I'm saying it right, TIMS? Okay, TIMS is outdated. The router they were suggesting that the router must have driven a bus. It kind of sounded like they felt like there was a disconnect between how the job is actually running and what they're seeing on the bus. So I appreciate it. Read that.
And if they made a comment about the TIM system, now, unless it's changed at the state level, that's still a state system that we have to use for routing purposes. So it's been around a long time, so I don't know if it's been updated or not. But
Will that be replaced with what you were talking about earlier? I was listening while I was driving.
TIMS won't be replaced. It's
Okay.
every district in the state except for one uses TIMS.
So that whole GPS type of system, that's
The
not...
TIMS is a routing system.
Okay.
yeah, so the TIM is what you use to run the routes and assign students, and I think most people probably sort of like scheduling, run it and get a report and maybe get a 90% accuracy that they go back and kind of hand do everything. And so in other words, TIMS may put you on a road and on the map it looks flat. The geography of that road may be something that's not, good for a bus to travel on, so they go back and do that. So they use that for routing purposes. And I'm is it Nash is the only one that doesn't use it? Yeah. So yeah, I remember that. So, but it's a state
We could
system.
share that with the state, that our feedback is that it's really not great.
But the GPS, every district that has it, they just choose whatever product that they want to use. And so, but it's good to see that we have route to route. It makes it much easier.
Chair Swanson.
Thank you. And thank you all for, providing this. And I would be remiss if I did not say that I can hear Ms. Johnson Hostler in my head when we talk about surveys, making sure that they are accessible across the board, not just making sure that it's on a digital platform, but giving folks an opportunity to be able to provide their feedback if they're not tech savvy. So that's something that I was reading through this. I said, well, if Amika was still here, she would definitely lift it up. So I want to lift that up. But I'm also curious now, as we break down the pay, because I get that pay, cost of living has increased, and if you're a bus driver and you're not necessarily making, 20-some dollars an hour, I can get that. But I also want to know, what's the data differentiated versus our bus drivers and safety assistants? Because one thing that I've heard from safety assistants is that they do not have worked the full 8 hours or whatever it's necessarily for them to receive a full pay scale, which is concerning and problematic. So I'm wondering what is being done to rectify that situation. And I know that you've indicated that there could be a pathway for them to become bus drivers, which is always great, but perhaps if a person does not want to become a bus driver, what other options could they have versus just saying either become a bus driver or stay in this situation? Because to me, I feel like that could be a disconnect, and it also does not improve working conditions, which is concerning, knowing that we don't have that many bus drivers. We don't want to lose folks who play a valuable role. So I'm wondering if you could speak a little bit more to that.
So with the safety assistants, we're giving them the opportunities, the ones that have, I want to say, the best attendants have been placed back out in the districts, so they can help service the districts, and when they need a bus, they go on general education, I believe you guys call it yellow bus. So sometimes they're on those buses, and they are getting the full 8 hours. And so there's been opportunities for them to get the 8 hours.
So it is 8 hours.
Yes,
Because I was,
a majority, now some come in round about, I want to say 7 hours and 30 minutes, but a majority of them are getting 8 hours.
I've met with some, and they were saying it's around 6 hours is what their requirement is. So if it's 8 hours, I'm grateful to hear that, but I'm wondering, is that going to be shared with their,
Trainings that you would have to go through. So if they can't complete their route, let's say that it's 6 hours and they need additional, an hour and a half, including the 30 minutes for lunch, is the training that long for them to get the full amount of shifts, or is it broken down like? It's broken down into modules, so they can take a couple, I believe the longest one is 30 minutes. So they can take a couple of modules and get paid for that day.
But that training, though, first and foremost, is to give us the flexibility of keeping them on the clock during inclement weather, or when we have some other issues where, we may not be able to hold a full day of school. So that is really the push for that, although there are different modules that they can utilize. I think, what we should do is canvass those that do want the 8 hours, because we do have some that don't. We have bus drivers that don't want 8 hours. But I think we can align those that want additional hours with the additional needs that we have on some of these other routes as we're repositioning the routes throughout the district, and that'll be a further opportunity for them to be able to get hours.
And I think with the safety assistants that I have spoken with and that has reached out to me, I think it is clear that all of them want 8 hours. And I think when it was a scenario or story that was shared with me, that when they brought that up, that their supervisor, and I did share this with the superintendent, that shared that they wanted to get the 8 hours that they could clean the building, which I thought was disrespectful, and in fact, it quite honestly pissed me off that someone would actually say that to an employee. So excuse my French for that, but I do think that it's about conditions, and I know that I've been over there, and Mr. Strickland had cleaned up some of the issues that I had saw firsthand.
Well, you should see it, that's, we did the whole thing.
Well, the behaviors as well. I think it's the customer service aspect is a problem as well, because if we're sharing that feedback with our families and holding those families to certain standards, then the same has to be done for those supervisors who are speaking with their employees. Disrespect across the board should never be tolerated. For someone to say that if they want their hours to go clean a building, that is not acceptable. So I'm hoping that in these surveys that there could be some data that pulls out, or maybe a conversation to get folks aligned to understand that, number one, 8 hours across the board is what the expectation is, and to clear those up. And so hopefully that can be some conversation that could be held, because again, I think our safety assistants are ones who do reach out quite often and are not often as valued as they should be. So I just want to lift that up since I had this opportunity. Thank you, Mr.
So this is one of the things I'll have Jason, Mr. Tonkin go back and do, and run a report on the safety assistants, and we can get information about who has what hours. And so I think we can quickly determine if 80% are full-time with 40 hours or whatever that number may be. So if we can get that report and know what it is. I think the other piece would be looking at how we determine what amount of time is needed. So you may have a situation where a person is a safety assistant, and that routing is, they may only be assigned to 2 hours in the morning, 2 hours in the afternoon, and it's only a 4-hour route. So we'll just need to go back and see what time people have been given, if indeed there are people that want less than 40 hours. But the main thing would be, what is the need? And then make sure that we match that need and identify if there are those that want full-time work, then we can make it available. But then at the end of the day, determining what the cost would be if there's a gap between 70% at 40 hours versus 100%. So we'll need to know what that is. But once you do that, then we can share that with the board to let you know what we have definitively.
Thank you for this in-depth survey. I think Chair Swanson hit on a lot of my questions around safety assistance, but I do want to, just for clarity purposes, are safety assistance hours a contractual agreement between, like, us, Wake County Public Schools, or is that, like, does that have to do with the state? Like, how does that work? And what happens, and how is the situation handled where they are notified in the morning that they're not gonna make their required required 8 hours? What happens?
So most of the safety assistants are assigned a route. When that route comes in, they get on that route. That route can span from 3, maybe up to 4 hours in the morning and in the PM. So it kind of goes with the route. There's not a mandatory 8. I came from a system where we did a mandatory 8 hours, and where I would have people work 6 hours and get paid for 8. And it doesn't work the way that most people think it will work. On this end, I've instructed Mr. Posey to find meaningful work for the way. That way they are getting the 8. Because if we start paying people 4 hours or 6 hours and paying them for a full day, then we have drivers that want to get paid for a full day. I'm sure we have other factions of work that want to get paid 8 hours for a full day. But we have to make sure that we find a meaningful work for them to do to get paid for the full day. So I'm in support of the 8 hours, but 8 hours work not given.
So, and, I'm sorry.
As many as you want.
Okay.
Yeah.
So when you say meaningful work, what does that?
That comes in the form of training. That means, hey, if we have a midday, would you go on the midday? A lot of them turn down middays. Middays is where we have students that may go on a field trip or may need support during the middle of the day. A lot, not all, some will run and jump to it because they want their time. Some will turn it down because they do not want the time. So we do have to find those individuals that are willing to work that full day versus individuals, we're in a population to where they do receive certain benefits for their age and they can't work a certain amount of hours, or they do lose their benefits. So it's kind of, we have to gauge it to the place. I think a lot of the younger generation wants to work the 8 hours, and those are the ones that we kind of try to pull in and say, hey, can you work? A lot of the older safety assistants don't want to work those hours because it complicates the benefits that they would receive, because it puts them at a higher threshold of making money.
I think we can canvass the safety assistants in terms of what hours they are working now and what it is that they want to work, because I'm hearing some conflicting things. I know I've talked to safety assistants too, and as Jason said, we have many of them that don't want to work during the middle of the day. And in order to accrue enough hours, you've got to both work the morning and the afternoons, and if they're not long enough, sometimes you've got to pull those midday routes. So if you give us some time, I think we can canvass those and ask them what it is they're wanting to do. We can get some feedback on the midday routes. I do know firsthand that many of them like having that midday break where they're not on the bus. But let us get some feedback from them and we can share that out.
And Mrs. Gordon, I'll go back to what Chair Swanson shared, what Mr. Tonkin is talking about, and that is the meaningful work piece. And so, as Mr. Swanson has shared, if somebody is asked, okay, well, there's extra time, would you be willing to clean the building? They may look at a certain ask as offensive. So we want to make sure that from that aspect.
That is offensive, Dr. Taylor. That is offensive.
Well, that's what I'm trying to get to, is that if they feel that that is something that's offensive, then when we talk about meaningful work, then we've got to also balance that with if there are 8 hours that they want to get and they've only worked 6 hours, then we don't want to be in a position where we just give them the 2 hours. So that's what we're trying to figure out is what is that meaningful work that we know is not offensive. And that's what we don't want to be, is ask anybody to do something that's offensive. But at the same time, from a physical standpoint, we don't want to be in a position to say, you work 6 hours, but we're going to give you 8, because if that's the case, bus drivers are going to get in line as well. And that's the only thing I want to make sure that we balance out, because I didn't know anybody was asked that, and I would certainly feel the same way if I were to be asked that. And so that's what we want to make sure that we balance out, not asking offensive stuff, but then having meaningful work.
So that brings me to like push back on my very first question about their I guess their contracted hours. Does their contract, they receive a contract, correct?
I don't believe so. From the system that I came through, they were contracted for 184
That's
days.
good.
We're not contracted here.
Okay, so it's just their job description.
Correct.
So does their job description clearly indicate that they may or may not get 8 hours? Like there is a,
So I believe the full-time is represented at 7 hours, or I want to say at 32 hours. I'll check, but I believe, because that was the same on the bus driver side. And then for the drivers are asked, hey, if you would like some extra hours, would you clean your bus? And a lot of drivers do clean their bus, but that's across the world. I don't want to just say Wake County. That is across the United States, that drivers do clean their bus, and attendants do clean the inside of the bus. So that is something that's practiced worldwide, not just Wake County. Now, as far as cleaning the building, I've never asked a person to clean the building, because that
Outside the
yeah,
scope.
that's outside the scope of work.
right, okay. And I just have one more question regarding the actual survey questions. I know that we've spent a lot of time talking to transportation staff around their actual work site. And what I don't see, and correct me if I'm wrong, but what I don't see reflected in the survey is questions regarding safety concerns and working conditions regarding to their work site. Has that ever been addressed? Has that?
So with that, I put in there, like, you have the equipment, but then again, I've been out on site and I've talked to a couple of them. I didn't put that in there because I know a couple of sites that need a lot of work. I want to say probably Broderick, that was one of the districts. I talked to Mr. Lanier about it. So there's a couple of places that we need to make sure that they have a better working condition.
And if I may follow up with that, we follow the same process with where they are located, whether it's in the building, or many times we have them in local units, or for example, out at Capitol Boulevard with the work order process. Work orders are submitted, and we follow through the same process, getting those completed, just like we would with the school.
Is there the same time span? Because a lot of.
Well, our first
and I know
priority.
I'm getting.
Right, our first priority has
Apologize.
always been schools, to keep kids in school. So I think it's truthful to say that the schools are at the front of that list in terms of keeping students in school. Other than that, I don't know that there's any hierarchy or priority other than that.
Any other questions?
I mean, just a thought. Sure. I mean, at the end, I really appreciate the depth of the survey and then providing all of the verbatim data. I think that's really helpful. And I think as you see it, you'll see that all of our bus drivers, all of our transportation staff don't all think alike, right? They have different priorities. Some have satisfactions in some areas, some have satisfactions in different areas. And I think just for, as board members, it's always important to remember that sometimes we'll hear from like a group of people that really want something really, really badly, but that's not always what the majority of the group wants. And so surveys like this, some of the suggestions about going back and maybe surveying on some very specific issues and making sure everybody has that opportunity, I think is really a good idea, and I appreciate that management style, because we don't want to get in a trap where we hear like a lot from just a small number of people and then advocate for a change that people don't want, right? The majority don't want. But if there's, sometimes there's a lot of people that may all think or want something, but don't either have the courage or the belief to come forward with it because they don't think anything's going to change. So I just wanted to lend my support for what you're doing, and I think you've got some good suggestions for some future work you can do with the employees, so thank you.
All right, you all know what we're doing. Go ahead, come on. I just pulled this.
Come right on up.
Yeah, please. Gardner Middle School schematic design presentation. Ms. Sharp, Mr. Webster, Ms. Reese.
So first, thank you for giving us this opportunity to present our schematic designs. Our project meets the WCPSS Strategic Plan Priority 3 and is supported by the AIMS 17 and 18. With me today, I have Alice Reese, who is our senior site planner, and I have Shane Webster, who is our senior building planner. So as mentioned in a few earlier committee meetings, we are in the schematic design, which is still very early in the design process. So there are still many moving parts. So as we go through these slides, I just want everybody to understand that the project is still progressing. Right now, our design team has laid out all of our standard program elements on the site to make sure that they all fit appropriately. We have also held a few community meetings. We call them visioning sessions with our community folks, and those were with our East Garner students and staff, the parents, and some of our community members, as well as representatives from the Garner Consolidated School Alumni Group. We do plan to continue meeting with our Garner Consolidated Alumni Group to look at areas throughout the building where that we can continue and celebrate the rich history of this site. The main purpose of this project was to address capacity. So as you go through these slides, what you'll see is that we are going to be bringing the mobile capacity that is currently on this site into a brick and mortar addition. And so right now, the capacity of this campus is 832, the building capacity without the mobiles. And so what our plan is to build an addition to bring the capacity up to 1450. So in doing that, what we've got to do is we've got to right-size some of our core spaces and address some of our site needs. And so at this time, what I'll do is turn this over to Alice Reese, and she'll start going through some of those site adjustments.
So just a quick walkthrough on the existing site, East Garner. The existing buildings are all there in the darker shade of blue. The current building entrance is located between the number 1 and the number 3, indicated with the black arrow. And what you'll see right adjacent to that is a very short carpool loop, which causes a significant backup onto Jones Sausage Road. As Elizabeth mentioned, we have 2 modulars, and your eyes are not deceiving you. They are inside the track, right there off of East Garner Road. The track itself is pretty unique. It's about 285 meters. The softball backstop, it's a little bit hard to see. I could point it out. It's underneath the shadow of the water tower here in this red square. And also the softball field has grass infield. The outfield of the softball overlaps with the multi-purpose field. We do have a large undeveloped portion of the site, and that's about 20 acres, which was purchased in 2021, specifically to bring those site issues up to standard. And onto the proposed plan. You'll see the existing buildings are shown in white, and they will remain. The new building addition is in orange, with the new building entrance will be at the number 2, directly adjacent to carpool, to visitor parking, and with easy access to staff parking. With the additional 20 acres, you can see we're able to make some pretty dramatic improvements to athletics and carpool. So carpool now meets the MSTA recommended length, and what I'm pretty excited about is we're able to double the use of the carpool lane
to provide access to the athletic fields. And then you see a little parking lot down there as well. We often hear from principals at middle school, there's not enough event parking, and this is a really great way to get our families down to the areas and then provide them a place to park. We have now a 400-meter track, competition field, bleachers. The softball field is regulation as well. And we have a standalone restroom building due to the distance of the bleachers from the school. And that's a code issue. We have the bus service now off of East Garner Road, about number 11 up there on the drawing. And we're also able to create, with the cafeterias inside the building, Shane will go into that in more detail, but with that on the north side of the building, that area outside is going to be shaded, which is prime opportunity for that outdoor dining that we know middle schoolers particularly love. Paired up with the bus drop-off and bus entrance, we can really parlay that into a nice plaza to greet the students in the morning and give them something to look forward to at lunchtime. So I'm excited about those features. And Shane can talk about the inside of the building.
Thanks, Alice. Our work begins with prioritizing the school's needs and trying to identify those things that are important to them, but also fit within available budget and scheduling constraints. And as Elizabeth noted, we held some visioning sessions with the staff, principal, students, and some of the community members. And we gathered that information, which is important to the design team. And so the results are that the design team was able to propose the improvements that we're going to look at today. The large orange space on the right there is the proposed location for the new addition. And what we learned meeting with staff and the principal is that their highest needs were a larger auditorium, because the auditorium they have currently is undersized, way below program standards. And the dining facility is going to be way under-programmed as well for the new larger capacity that we'll be bringing to the campus. In this diagram here, you see some blue areas. Those are indicating the areas where we will have minor renovations, mostly in the corridors, and that predominantly will include life safety improvements, new LED lighting, new HVAC upgrades, new ceiling and paint. The dark brown areas are the places where we're going to have major renovation work, and those areas that you see mostly are because those current spaces are moving to the new addition. So that we'll have to go back into those old spaces and bring those up to current standards for their future use. One of the other key things that we were asked to look at by the principal and the staff was student security and safety. So you see some yellow connecting corridors to the buildings. Those are being provided because currently the students have to leave a building to go outside to enter or to get to their classroom in another building. These connectors will help bring the buildings together, so no longer will the students have to leave a building to get to a class in another building. This is an enlargement of the north end of the new classroom addition. This is where the new auditorium will be housed. It's larger, along with the dining facility, which is number 5. The auditorium is number 1. These are now up to current standards. You see the blue arrows, major entrances from the north is where the buses will load and unload. There's an outdoor canopy that will provide protection from the weather for outdoor dining, but also for the bus loading and unloading procedures. The blue area to the bottom left there is the entrance. They currently don't have a security vestibule, so we'll be providing them for the security vestibule. The administration is centrally located in this main gathering area of the new addition for good supervision, but also for easy access to the administrative suite by students and staff. The southern leg of the new addition is primarily for classrooms, science classrooms, regular classrooms. This wing will hold a complete, or excuse me, 2 grade levels. It also has learning commons spaces, workrooms for the teachers, and collaborative spaces as well. And the whole addition is one story, so fits nicely on the site. And this diagram here shows the work that's going to have to happen to refurbish some of the existing spaces. The purple area, number 1, that's where the existing auditorium area is being relocated. So that will become new CTE, and number 3 will be health room spaces. The areas in green, number 2 on the left, those will be renovated for spec ed. And again, you see all the yellow corridors, that represents circulation. And other repurposed areas include the lower left, where you see the number 1. That's where the visual arts classrooms will be held. There's learning commons in there, which will also double as a gallery space for the students. The existing dining is that block of classrooms, green and blue on the upper right. That'll be renovated into classrooms and learning commons space. There'll be some minor renovations going on in what's currently the admin space, which will be converted to student support services, and some minor renovations in those 2 classrooms numbered number 2 up there, and some minor renovations within the media center. Okay. In terms of the schedule, well, we'll finish up design in the summer of 2027. We'll be bidding in the fall of 2027, with construction spanning from the fall of 2027 to the spring of 2030. The new building addition will be available to the students for move-in the fall of 2029. And then once they're into that new building, then we go back into the older part of the campus and finish up our renovations and the remaining site work, and everything should be completed by the spring of 2030. Okay. And so with that, we thank you for your interest in this important project, and we're here to answer any questions you may have.
Questions?
Thank you all. You all have done a great work with making sure that you are hearing the community's needs. I know that we all, have talked about this in great detail, but for transparency, can you say a little bit about those visioning sessions and how it has impacted where we are right now in the process, and what do we anticipate, if at all, if any at all, any changes in the schematic design?
Well, the visioning sessions have really formed the schematic designs. There were times when we thought we were going to take buildings down, and now we're not taking buildings down. We are working with a group and coming up with great ideas of what we can do within those buildings that we are not taking down. So we've just had some really great discussions. Our groups have been so supportive of us, as well as us supportive of them. It's just been a very good working environment, and we continue to work with them, because what our goal is going to be is that we celebrate throughout the entire building. We're not just going to concentrate in the 2 buildings that are part of the consolidated high school. We're going to concentrate it throughout the entire building, because the community may never go in those buildings often. They're going to go into the main building, they go into the media center. So we thought we'd celebrate those areas more in those more public, I'll call them more public spaces. But it's been a really good experience working with the groups. I can't say any more about how good the experience has been with them.
Do we anticipate any changes, or like minor changes, and where would those changes come from? What feedback would they be coming from?
When you say that we're gaining from having continual meetings with our visioning groups?
Yes, I know in the beginning you stated that this could change. This is just the beginning of our...
Yes. So just design in itself, we're developing because we have to meet with our municipality groups.
Okay.
So maybe our municipality groups may say, I'm just throwing out something like a driveway. They may want us to move the driveway a little bit further from an intersection. So that driveway may change. I know that Alice is continuing to work with our design team on the parking lots and the traffic patterns because she's just not, she hasn't gotten there yet, and they haven't gotten there yet. So these designs, we're just at the beginning. We just are making sure everything fits, but now it's just going to evolve. It's not going to change from like, you're not going to have a carpool, now you are going to have a carpool. It's going to be very minor changes.
Okay. And then I just had one other question about the what is it, the enclosed connectors? Are those like completely enclosed, or are those like breezeways?
They're more like breezeways, but they're going to be protected breezeways.
Okay.
So that students can't go out beyond the boundaries of the enclosures, and the public can't get in.
Okay.
But at this point, with our current budget, we don't foresee us totally enclosing and providing air conditioning and heating and all that.
Okay.
Budget changes, we find some extra money, that might be something we go back and look at. But right now, unfortunately, that's the approach we're taking.
All right, thank you.
Thank you for the presentation. I have just one question. With the layout that you have, it looks like, if I'm looking at it correctly, in slide number 8, you have a special education in section number 2. Just through touring our classrooms, we have a lot of children that also have physical needs in some of those classrooms, and they seem to be like really far away from the rest of it. I know you said it's fluid, but I'm just wondering if you've had feedback from staff that couldn't be an easier location for them.
We haven't had spec ed come in yet to really sit down with us and analyze those particular locations, but we will. We normally, on every project, have them sit down and go through that. So we want to hear their concerns. That's a great point, is the location, proximity to other spaces they might want to have access to. So when that meeting occurs, we can make adjustments. We haven't made final decisions on.
So East Wake High School is one of my high schools, and I know just on an everyday, in between every period, when the bell rings, there's so many nooks and crannies and hallways to go down. One of the biggest challenges they have is getting from class to class in that time period, and I just see that if they have, physical challenges as well, that they are pretty far out there, so.
And I did want to let y'all know too, this is just a few of the spec ed classes. This is not the suite.
Right.
So our spec ed suite is in the not the older edition, I guess if you go back to the slide that shows us all the site plan, it's in the newer, but is that correct, Shane, that the spec ed suite is in this, it's in the gray?
It's in the gray, yeah.
But it's the...
It's in that leg, just to the left.
Yeah.
There were two.
It's where the media center is. I'm going. You got it? Thank you.
There you go.
Yes. So we do have spec ed, when we meet with our spec ed folks, they like us to spread spec ed out all over the building. They do not want us to just have spec ed in one section of the building. So that's what we tend to do. But like Shane said, we also meet with our spec ed folks. They will look at this, work through it with them. So those are kind of some of the things that may change. That classroom, instead of being spec ed, may be a general classroom, and then another classroom that we have down and, closer to the media center and the cafeteria becomes a spec ed classroom.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, you just kind of addressed it, Ms. Sharp. Like, I was concerned if you haven't taught a spec ed yet, how soon that was occurring, because this seems far down the pike to me, to have not had that conversation. But, I mean, you just expressed confidence that it wouldn't be an overhaul.
Right. So when we have standards, and we meet with our spec ed folks and all of our academic folks to create those standards.
Right.
So when we're going through these projects, we're speaking with them just to tweak where things are. We already have kind of an overview of what their expectations are.
Yeah.
So yes, there'll be minor things, and like a spaghetti classroom is a general classroom, but we can easily move those around. They're still little blocks moving.
I think one of the things the design team was thinking about when they chose to put spec ed there was those classrooms have a tendency to be a little bit larger than the other classrooms in the older part of the building. So it may just be something when we sit down with spec ed and they can look at the space comparison and tell us whether or not that trade-off is something that's important to them.
No, thanks.
And if I could, I just wanted to go back, you raised the point about the trailers being inside the track loop. Is that going to present a future problem? Just, I know that many of the coaches are very protective of their tracks.
Oh, no. So what she was mentioning is the trailers are there now, or in there. Those are coming out. All our trailers are going to be gone, where there'll be no trailers on this site. The new track is going to have a nice, beautiful field in the middle of it.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you for the clarification.
Ms. Coffey?
I'm just wondering, as we're going through this, because I know that we're trying to preserve the history of what is already there, and the connectivity of those hallways. And at first, I was looking at 12, thinking that was the entrance, and then everything was going off of that, but I was looking at it wrong, because number 2 is actually where the entrance is. So where 13 and 12 is, would that not improve the flow if that was actually connected? Like for classroom-wise?
Oh, you mean going across that courtyard?
Yeah, I'm going to go back to East Wake High School. They just
Right.
have so many different, like, wings and everything all over, that it's really logistically, it's just hard for not only the students, but staff, when they do need to get to an area quickly, they've got to go through all these little funnels. So if you had that more of like a grid where 13 and 12 were actually connected, if they're at this side, they don't have to run all the way around. They can just go up to the
Yeah.
hall.
Yeah.
Looking at the plan as a flat image, you would say that's perfectly logical.
Right.
Unfortunately, what happens is that L-shaped building on the bottom, and you see that kind of circular courtyard element there, it actually is up on a hill about 5 or 6 feet.
Okay.
And you go down into that courtyard, and so that the building on the back end where 13 is, where the existing auditorium and gym is located, it's actually about 5 or 6 feet below the media center and that building just to the south of it in this plan. So it's a big grade differential right there. So there would have to be some kind of ramping system, which would take a lot of space, or some kind of lift system, you know. So that's one reason why we avoided doing that. The other one is, you know, our budget is being stretched as it is. And so, we just didn't feel like we had the budget to go that route. But we took the opportunity to enclose an existing covered walkway as the alternative at this point.
Is that the same reason why the academic wing isn't attached on this side? Between,
Below 14?
yeah.
Oh, yeah, that's the building D. That's got a grade differential, not quite as bad. It's probably about 4 feet, would you say, Alice? Yeah, about 4-foot differential. It's down below the main building in the center there, number 4, number 12, that building there. Plus, the life cycle analysis that was done on these buildings recommended or suggested that building's probably close to the end of its lifespan.
Well, and also what we're doing with those buildings is for building, that is building D. So building D is not, we've got our 6 flex spaces that we've been putting in our new schools is in the new addition.
Right.
That is to plan for the future so that those are new classrooms. This building over here can also still be used for classroom spaces, but what we're going, this is what we'll be talking with the school even further on, is it sits right by the art, so this is an arts magnet, and so it sits right by the arts, this building here. So So this is what we're renovating right now to be their new art classrooms. And so what we were going to suggest, because they hold events in that building, so what we were going to suggest is using it more like an event-type center and do like what we call gallery walks. I've been working with the magnet folks for a long time, and what they like to do is display what they work on during the day, and a lot of it they've been trying to do like outside, and I'm like, well, how are we going to do that? Because, weather and things like that. So we were going to suggest maybe using that as a building that they could walk through and do gallery walks. But during the day, it can still be used as classroom space too. There's nothing that's going to keep us from being able to do that.
That it's just having disconnected
Yeah, yeah.
that we're trying to get away from. Okay. Any other questions at this time? Thank you so much.
Yeah. All right, thank you.
And I guess we have a capital improvement pool construction cost report. We could have titled this the Chris Haggerty.
Mark Cooney's here, our Director of Project Controls. We had some conversations some months, meetings ago about where we are with projects and things like that. And so we went back as far as we had good data to look at a couple of components of the projects that we have been doing. And the key things that we really wanted to focus on, and we'll talk a little bit about this in more depth in a moment. We want to look at cost per square foot and kind of look and see how we were doing compared with the state. And if you all recall, there was a recent article about how the costs have just phenomenally gone through the roof more recently. But as importantly, we wanted to go back and, the CIP is a living, breathing document. It's that 7-year look ahead. So we tried to capture as much valid data as we could about when we brought projects in, when they were named, when we knew kind of sort of what we were doing, and establish those initial budgets to when we got to the end of the project. And I'll give you an example of how things can change greatly. While we may have planned for Athens Drive High School initially to be one budget, as we worked through the process with you all, the decision was made to increase that budget to add additional amenities on that site, in particular gym. So I just wanted to frame that so that, as we look at something today and we're not doing it 7 years from now, lots of things can change. Also keep in mind, and this was the exercise we went through, and as Mark put this together, we critiqued it pretty hard, and hope you all will as well. Keep in mind what we went through with COVID. We had some wins with COVID, but we also had some losses, and those losses were pretty substantial in the bid market of where we looked at doing, I think, beginning Woods Creek and 2021 up to 23 and on into 24, we were still looking at some of the ramifications of that. You can make the argument, and we can discuss this as well, that the budgets that came after that, maybe we were a little gun shy, but we weren't $20 million gun shy. And so we tried to align those budgets, did align those budgets with the bids that we were getting all through those times. And so I'll package this all up and go through the couple of other slides, and then we can take some questions. But we looked at our total project cost of about $1.37 billion, and that's in the 6th or 7th column over that says total project cost. And then we look at the delta with that between that and the original project budget. And that comes up to $95 million, which sounds like a lot of money, and it is a lot of money. But you have to consider and factor in those COVID projects where we really took it on the chin, and just I did some easy math to get to 3 projects right there in the middle, Balcom, Hilltop, Needmore, and Rex Road, where we were $63 million over budget. And again, that's directly attributable to COVID and what happened then. And so if you back out, if you make some assumptions that, okay, well, we wouldn't have had that information or those budgets, they wouldn't have been at all because of COVID. The picture looks really good, we feel like, so you go from that delta of 7.5% down to something that's roughly 2.7%. And as you're projecting out projects, sometimes as long as 6 or 7 years, but sometimes shorter, particularly in the market that we're in, we felt that was pretty good. If you move to the next slide, Kelly, I know you're driving over there, and we can come back to these in a second. And Mark, if you want to jump in, please do. Why don't you handle this one with the school construction costs?
So we reached out to Guilford, Johnson County, and we also reached out to contractors. This is not North Carolina DPI data, this is data that we solicited. Reached out to Charlotte Mecklenburg schools also and haven't heard back from them, but I went to their website and I have some additional numbers for them. But if you look at across the board, we're trending lower than the averages that we've solicited and presented in this slide. In Charlotte Mecklenburg, I looked at one of their current elementary schools under construction. It's 105,000 square feet with a budget of $80.5 million. That comes out for a total project budget of $764 a square foot. Their new high school, they've got one new, a smaller one under construction. It's come in at $589,000 a square foot. Their North Mecklenburg replacement, which is 15,000 square feet, is at $725 a square foot. So if you compare that to what our averages are, we're right there at $586 a square foot. So we're doing well in that in regards to what else is happening in the state. But we take it serious to look at the bang for the buck, getting the best schools we can build. They're going to last. Their maintenance, reducing maintenance criteria, and also are very energy efficient. So there's a lot of moving parts. But this is data that they provided. The Charlotte Mecklenburg was off their website, and those numbers, I don't know what. There could be a lot of rock on that site. There could be things that we don't know about those numbers. So I'll just say that there's some unknowns there.
It's apples and apples as best as we can tell from the data that we have. And then, Kelly, if you flip over to that last slide, and then again, we can come back to the first one for questions. We felt like this was a win, a huge win for us in terms of, if you look at the original programming information for Parkside Middle School, Marshall High School versus the current program of where we ended up. You all will remember we call it the pivot. That's something we've used lots of times. It was challenging. It was engaging. It may be considered difficult in how we got through that process, but we did. But the benefit of doing that and having the wisdom to move forward with something different and do that pivot, we reduced what our expected costs were early on. I think a huge win for us in terms of everything else is that additional capacity that we were able to add that we didn't have before. And that's huge. We feel like that's a huge win as well. So that's the short brief. You all asked us to share some information with you all on where we are, and I'll just emphasize again, we went back as far as we could get good, reliable data that we had been published, that we were familiar with, that we could hang our hat on. And then we looked at it and presented it as it was. But if you factor in that COVID factor, it really puts us in a good position for where we're going with things. So I'd be glad to answer any questions.
When you are looking at a new project and you're trying to come up with a total project cost based on kind of previous projects, I assume there's some of that. Do you include, how do you handle the inflation aspect of it when, especially when it's more volatile these days? Then, so to project out to like, so we have the, and I'll just, so everyone can have an example, we have the high school examples, we know we're looking at, East Wake in a few years. How do we project out that cost, for instance?
So we have created a database that we track our GMP, guaranteed maximum price, down to the CSI level, which is 33 divisions, and that's how a contractor breaks out a project. So we've been tracking, we got that to 2017, so we can see the trends very quickly. The crystal ball question is very difficult, and what we basically take is an escalation factor of looking at inflation historically. Right now, we're using a factor about 3.1 to 3.25% per year in that escalation factor. Now, the volatility of a pandemic, the volatility of a tariff, even the Panama Canal during a drought season, those things are hard to predict. So you build in some contingencies and hope you can get through those rough spots. And we, as you can see with COVID, with that kind of we were able to do that. And my predecessor did some amazing juggling with budgets, cleaning up all the reserves you can, and not canceling a project, which that was a difficult task.
And you mentioned East Wake High School, so I think it's important to point out that in the case of East Wake, that's a known entity in terms of the site. We basically know what we have there. It's also worthwhile to point out that some of these other projects, we have different processes in place now to identify cost constraints as we go into preparing project budgets, meaning that we are more fully evaluating the sites. We're performing more due diligence earlier and more often on the sites. So we have changed how we do that, and that will pay benefits down the road as we evaluate sites.
I know Mr. Haggerty has a few questions. Does anyone else before I let him go? Mr. Haggerty?
Okay, thank you. I appreciate the collection of all of the data here, and we've only had it up since the original posting, so I might not be getting all of this accurately, but I have an observation, and then a theory, and then a question. If we can go back to the slide that compares the other North Carolina schools you pulled.
Right there?
Yeah. So the first thing that I looked at, and then looking at the summary, you'd come away with a pretty positive view. You look at the average cost of building construction and project construction, elementary, middle, and high school, and you compare that to the Wake projects that you identified. And by comparison, it looks really good that we're able to build, that our building costs, average building costs for each of these schools, and our average construction costs for each of these schools by square foot seems to be significantly below what other districts around the state have. And so that seems like a really good thing, that we're getting a lot of value, a lot of bang for our buck. But then, when we said we felt good that we were comparing apples to apples, I'm a little concerned maybe there's different kinds of apples. So if we look at the actual building sizes, I'm noticing that the schools in the other counties are generally all much smaller than the schools we build here. So my theory is that we're seeing greater efficiency by building larger schools. Is there anything to that theory?
I'd say sounds reasonable. And we are building our schools per standard as far as the capacity, so, yes.
Go ahead.
There are many districts, one that I'm very familiar with right down the road where I live, that don't build a lot of schools. And so, to be fair with the comparisons, we have programmers. We get the same school every time. We build the same school at East Wake we do at Felton Grove. So we have that sameness. What other districts may not have is that robust process of programming buildings and having design guidelines so that we're, getting the same thing every time. So there's some variability in that as well, because some districts may build much cheaper, inexpensive schools that are one-offs, where others may build those that are much more expensive. But this is the data we had to go on.
Ms. Sharp, did you have a?
I was just going to say, what I have found is they build in the other counties, or their schools are smaller than ours. They don't build the capacity that we build.
Well, and that was to my point.
Yeah, I was thinking.
Was the difference in size and the different capacity letting you get more value on that footprint,
That's right.
right? In terms of like the dollars it costs to build a school per student. Now, as I look at this too, to the point, I mean, any data is only going to be, as good as the examples. The more examples you get, the more reliable it is. Everyone around this board table knows Felton Grove has had challenges, Morrisville has had challenges, and even though those are our two most recent experiences, they may not, be a typical of maybe what like an East Wake or another project might be. Is that fair? The Weldon City School example, though, I think skews the average because it's so much smaller than the schools we build in Wake County, right? You look at the other schools there, you're looking at $300 to $360 per square foot, $400 to $450. And then, Weldon blows that up. So you take the three and you average them together. It's maybe not as useful for what we're doing. It seems that the capacity of Clayton and Wilson's Mills is actually closer to what we have with the Morrisville High School, being one of our smaller high schools. Is that fair in terms of capacity and size?
I don't know the capacities, but it's probably, it's a good assumption.
The square footages seem similar, so that's why I was assuming that the capacity would be similar. And if we look at those, then the building cost and the project costs come out to about the same.
And Mr. Haggard, what I'll add to the Weldon City project, and this does probably give some inconsistency with the cost, because $50 million of that would have been paid by the state, so that meant that the county only really funded around $34 million. So they could have made different decisions about what they did want to put in. So there is, I think, a different kind of apple in that case.
And we discussed the available information, and just where you're discussing, we felt like it would be better to bring it all so we would leave no stone unturned. It is hard, the state doesn't really have a good clearinghouse for providing information. You would think they would, because they review all the plans, but it's not very good. I suspect we have as good as anybody in the state on data.
It used to be a good resource, and we used to look at it all the time and really compare ourselves to it. Unfortunately, it just hasn't been kept up and doesn't.
That one's good for $100 a square foot.
So as far as Wake County Public Schools and the size of schools, certainly that is a mix of many different factors. The smaller school systems, really, they don't do it that often. And a big ticket school is probably more difficult for them. Whereas in Wake County, you're combining many different factors. So the availability of land, trying to maximize those opportunities. These are decisions that were made years ago that we're continuing on. And if that's a discussion that the board wants to have, certainly that's a project, that we can look at.
Does DPI control the information? You said that you...
It's submitted by, or it used to be architects, and so they submit it, and it's just not...
Submitted to who, though?
To DPI. It's just not a robust process. Back in the day, we really depended on it. It was a great resource, and it's not so much now.
The last couple of years that I have checked, they have not updated their database, and it's been years.
And so, just to wrap up, so that's sort of what I was getting at, was, you remember back in the 90s, there was a lot of pressure from the county to build larger and larger schools. But it looks like what we've seen is we've been able to serve more students per dollar there's trade-offs, right? Programming and other trade-offs. But it seems like in using those capital dollars, we're getting a pretty good value out of the larger schools. And just as we look to whether we want to build larger or smaller schools, if we can build larger or smaller schools going forward, I just want to make sure I'm coming away with the right message from these slides. Is that?
I would add, with a larger school, like a high school, comes the need for more amenities. And so you would have, to a degree, you had a better scale, but you also may have more amenities that we have to.
Larger cafeteria, more bathrooms.
That, and we also have over 40 sports that we're supporting with Wake County Public Schools high schools.
Thank you.
So, budget related, in defense of DPI, I don't know that this is the reason, but I think it's important just to lift up that it is possible that the reason that that's not maintained like it used to be is they've had budget cuts too. The General Assembly has scaled way back on the funds that they've gotten for a variety of things that office does. And again, I don't know that that's the reason, but it's an example of one of the things when people talk about all this bloat and spending in an organization that's not directly in the classrooms, you get results like this, things that happen, consequences for all of that.
And we certainly didn't mean to say anything negative about
No,
school
right.
plan, because we're big fans of it. The services that they've provided in years past have been very helpful, and we want them to continue.
Yeah.
So, Ms. Evans, you are 100% correct about that. And that's actually one of the areas that I supervised when I was at DPI. And so there were reductions in terms of positions. I think overall DPI is probably less than 1,000 employees, around 800 and something. And so that particular division did see cuts, and as everybody in this room recognizes, the services that they provided 20 years ago, they just don't do that. And a lot of districts are now taking on those responsibilities themselves. But that's 100% correct in terms of the loss of capacity and the ability to support districts. They spend a lot of time working with smaller districts and larger districts. They can do much of that work themselves, but that is the reason.
Thank you. And I did not mean to imply that y'all were being negative toward them. I just meant in the greater scope of things, anybody listening, that it's an example of consequences.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So thank you.
Ms. Coffey?
On one of these attachments for Wake County construction costs, on the end, the last column, it has a bunch of dates. Can you clarify, did we secure the pricing then? Because I know you do get things ahead
You
of
talking about the
time.
initial CIP, the last column? Is that the one you're talking about?
Yeah. So I'm just wondering why that column is in there. Did that determine the pricing of what we?
No, we just felt like in going through the exercise, we wanted to go back and get valid data when we knew there was a budget there that, had some teeth to it that was legit. And we did that for our benefit, just to say that, we got a number today and we completed it a few years from now. I used the example again of Athens Drive High School. We had an initial budget, but through going through schematic design and listening to the feedback, we had made some changes, and that budget has changed. We've been able to incorporate it, and that was more of an exercise for us internally, but it was on the sheet, so we left it.
Yeah, and add on to Mark, that was really the first time I went from a placeholder to the actual school, where we could delineate that now it's not a TBD or an HS, whatever, it's now that school.
A school.
Right, which is helpful because then you see when it's actually complete, how much it costs.
Right.
I was just curious because like the last one, for example, Brentwood Elementary School, it's saying the completion date is 2027, but we put in the last column is 2022. So my question is that $565 per square foot, is that something that was the initial back in 2022 when we secured this is what it's going to cost to build this home, the school?
Now, those are updated numbers that you're seeing there, so that's based actually on the bid prices. And
That we got in 2022?
No, when we went to bid. So that's the construction.
I think what you're asking is that the original project budget of the 76, that was our first look at it. And then as we continued through the CIP and actually identify, because at that point in time, we didn't know which school it was, nor the magnitude of the renovation. So when we got that data pinned down, that's when we changed the numbers to align with what we have in reality and what we'll bid.
And so that project bid in 2025, and those numbers then reflect that 2025 bid number.
Okay. I was just trying to compare the apples to apples, because it's really hard to tell with the square footage that the other schools are using, and we're clearly using a lot more square footage, but it looks to be more costly for the elementary schools, drops a little for the middle school, and then it goes even lower for the high school, which we need bigger sizes for the high school, so it just wasn't really making sense.
Where we have and will continue to get better is establishing those budgets up front, and we do this through a variety of ways. Sometimes we do some real initial feasibility studies, which allow us to hire an architect early, look at a bunch of different options, do some preliminary programming up front, and then that helps us align our budgets later on. And we're doing more of that now than we did years ago.
That's good. Okay. And then my last part, just for clarity for me, because I do agree the Weldon City just seems to kind of blow the numbers out of the park there. So if we were to go to either Clayton or Wilson for their high schools, they seem to be, and it's more updated because their bid date is 24 and 25, they seem to be at a total project at 407 and 455. And I know that there was some complication with the Morrisville and Parkside that we were kind of going back and forth and made some changes there, but we're at 648 and 627. So that does seem like a considerable amount more per square foot.
And I think the big breakout on that is the site versus the site in Clayton is flat, established utilities. We had new sites, new utilities with a considerable amount of retaining walls and a very large number of fill and earthwork on those sites.
I can tell you for years, Johnson County built schools. I know we're about out of time, but Johnson County built it was a specific school by one architect. And if you ride by and look at them, you should see the pieces of property that they're on. They're huge. We put a middle school or high school on some of them. Their buildings are spread out, and so they have obviously much more available land than we do, and in some cases it's much better.
And I would also add that with the more urban setting that we have multiple municipalities here that we have to work with and adhere to their zoning policies and their development ordinances. Wake County's towns are, I'd say, much more sophisticated than most in the state. And so you have more developed development ordinances. And we have to follow those, and that it very well affects our cost. It's the overall appearance of the building. Some of them, you look at it and you say, wow. Well, some of that is really in compliance with the zoning ordinance, the development ordinances of those towns. And those districts that don't have that, they're more free to have a, let's say, less cost of building. I would also say that, again, for standards, we're really looking very hard at the maintenance of the building. So the systems are very standard and uniform. The materials are standard and uniform. We don't negotiate with the low bidder to get it to within budget by pulling scope off or changing materials. The maintenance department needs to know that this school is going to be this system, and that school is going to be the same system, so that they have the expertise to work on it.
Yeah, I think just as the chart, if people are looking at it from the outside, it looks like we're spending a lot more, but I do know that this Morrisville High and Parkside, we had a lot of landscape challenges to overcome, so we don't have like another set of high schools that are more current.
But it became a
to
win.
show. No, it did. It did.
Absolutely a win.
I'm just saying that's our only comparison as to the other counties. So it looks like we're spending a lot more, even though this is one of the most difficult projects, hopefully, that we have going forward, but there's no other ones to show the comparison of, we don't usually spend this much per square foot on these projects.
I'm going to close this out with two quick questions. It relates to this, it's sort of new business. Athens is on time to start this summer, and I'm assuming it is, but I'm asking that, and also an update on, we have, what, one new school opening?
Athens, the GMP for that's coming to you all at the board meeting next week. It's an early package for HVAC stuff.
Okay.
And then what was the other one? I'm sorry.
Do we have a new school opening?
Well,
Swift Creek is going to
Well, we-
opening.
I'm just making sure we're on time with all our buildings.
Yes.
Creek will open.
That's all I want to know. Is that, you want to,
Hilltop is opening as Hilltop.
all right.
You know, it's been a...
That's right. Thank you very much. We will adjourn at 2:50. Dr. Hill and Dr. Taylor, you have a minute?